Pax et bonum, peace and God's good to you on this beautiful spring day. Welcome to one of the most difficult to produce episodes I've ever done. The Crusades are a multi-layered, explosive to understand topic. But when you begin to take Islam seriously, talk about Islam the way Muslims teach and talk and wrote about it, the whole endeavor becomes even more explosive. And I'll explain why later. Last week I talked about Catholic religious motivations. This week, the Islamic religious worldview and how that motivated their warfare, conquest, also known as jihad, and the slave industry, for medieval Muslims. But first, a reflection on how we become who we are. In his now famed book, The Scandal of the Evangelical Mind, historian Mark Knoll delineated the hows and whys of evangelical anti-intellectualism. Clearly, it owes to our piety, heart-oriented versus head-oriented. Our approach to life in Christ is heart-oriented. Evangelicals, non-denominational Protestants are, I hope your seatbelt is fastened, my listeners, evangelicals are anti-intellectual. And the other day I was with folks from Sunday church, and one woman said to me, "You sure have a bunch of knowledge." And my friends, she didn't mean that as a compliment. She was irritated that I brought out layers to the biblical text that she had never considered. All that to say, welcome to a show where we give not only our hearts to the glory of Christ, we give him our minds too. Our minds? Yes, minds that God created to mirror his own. Minds he gave us so as to more greatly enjoy the beauty of his creation. Seminal to enjoying creation's beauty is our attribute of consciousness. Consciousness, one of the most taken for granted qualities of being human, consciousness. So thank you for wanting to share the beauty of consciousness with me today, wanting to turn your brain on for the glory of the triune God. I'm glad to have you with me. Hey, a shout out. Many unlisteners live in Cali, the Bear Flag State, the home of Walt's Magic Kingdom. Do you live in SoCal, need your commercial building re-roofed, or your 57-year-old home finally needs a new top? Contact Gallerini Roofing. True pros, they are licensed, bonded, and experienced roofers. You can phone them at 714-244-6567. I have friends who had Gallerini do work for them, and they were truly pleased. 714-244-6567. Take action now with skilled and professional roofers. Gallerini Roofing, proud sponsor of the Uncensored Unprofessor. Real quick, I need to resolve an important matter. Do you live in Idaho? Let me explain how to go through an intersection, a four-way stop. Now I know it's polite, chivalrous even, to each take a turn. You go, no, you go. You wave at me and I'll wave warmly at you. You catch my eyes, I'll catch yours, one at a time, one excruciating car at a time. Oh, folks. But that's neither polite nor efficient. No. The way to do this is that the two north and southbound lanes move through the intersection, and then the two east and westbound lanes, 2 cars at a time. Yes, 2 whole vehicles at a time, not one at a time, all around the 4 corners of the intersection, 2 at a time. And if we all pull together as a team, I know we can do this. I believe in you, Spudland. I believe in you. Ugh, people. Think with me. How do we become who we are? Is our identity fated? Are we, as some religions teach, shaped to be whom we are clear back to our pre-existence? So the universe predetermines the shape of our soul? Is that it? Is that it? Some social scientists, they assert that we are merely, if not also deterministically, the product of our environs. We are shaped, they say, perpetually by our surroundings. The values of our surroundings, the wirings, commitments, traditions, beliefs, and practices of our surroundings. Oh, it's no wonder they always want to try to create utopia. We'll all be happier if we can live inside the expert designed bubble of social perfection we have cooked up for you. Yeah, no. On the other side of the ledger is the genetic crew. They, the geneticists, want to argue that we are whom we are by virtue of our DNA, biology. Way out of our control is the fact that we get handed a load of being that is preeminently beyond our control. And me, I don't deny that one. I don't deny the sociological angle either. I mean Gersh. Genetics? I was bald at 35. My brothers are bald. I look like my dad. I think like my mom. I do have existential issues. Chief among them anger, existential issues that my entire extended Polish, German, Russian family deals with. So, yeah, I agree with the DNA crowd. But not only. We are also, I'm aware, what we choose. And this insight comes from many different philosophical schools, most recently the existentialists. Existentialism? Class, please say existentialism. Existentialism, teacher. The philosophical camp that says what we choose is what we are. What we choose from out of the pool of our consciousness is a way to mark a path, if not outright control reality. Consciousness and choices are a way toward freedom and being, becoming. Choices, power. Now me, obviously I believe all those and much more shape who we are as persons, and so shape us as souls. Much more than sociology, DNA, and our choices. Yeah, there's much more. Things like the contingencies of life, the hand of God, the influence of darkness. What kind of music shaped us? Our family dynamics, especially when we're younger. And then there's divine coincidences, the people we ran into, whereby the encounter resulted in our entire life taking a different, unexpected direction. Life's contingencies? Yeah, the course and decisions of institutions, churches, companies, schools, governments. Contingencies, things like the outcomes of elections that impact our bank account and therefore affects our freedom and our freedoms. I mean, institutions inexorably shape us, often imperceptibly. We get shaped by the ethos, the leadership decisions of massive institutions. What other kinds of contingencies? Well, things, events that may or may not happen. Contingencies like chronic hunger, storms, surprising weather events that redirect our family histories and our lives. Contingencies like battles and wars. Man, how many people across human history have had their entire lives redirected by an unexpected war? We'll be talking about that in the Crusades, right? Or, sheesh, we could ask people in Ukraine that question, right? We could ask people in war-bombed out Gaza. Whoo! Just one reason we should show some grace? We don't know how life's contingencies have trampled over people's souls. We don't know how accidents, faulty or faulty and absent parenting, or high-level bad leadership decisions have ripped, shredded somebody's very being and totes changed a future eventuation for them. But Because I agree with the existentialists that we can, to some important extent, shape our directions and our souls by choosing, I want to go back to decisions. And just so you know, some of this flows out of my last week's Dostoevsky on the fluctuating nature of faith, the faith reflection I gave last week. That one touched a deep spot in my soul. Thank you, Fyodor. You see, choices shape our life's path. In my own life, decisions have shaped where I now reside, geospatially. Decisions have shaped who my lifelong friends are. Decisions have even shaped who I am. That way back when, that apparently innocuous decision to take an ecclesiology class with Mel Robeck rather than a postmodern philosophy class with Nancy Murphy, it turns out that one little choice just ended up being a massive life redirect for me, even though I could have never known it at the time. I mean, back then I had waffled back and forth trying to choose which PhD class to take. I just got to get these classes over with so I can write my dissertation. I think if I remember correctly, the philosophy class didn't quite jive with my then work schedule. I don't know for sure, but it played out as a life-turning decision. Mashugana. The decision to break up with that girlfriend, I just knew we weren't right for one another, or just knew intuitively, I don't know, my bones were unsettled, just knew that she wasn't long-term right for me. The decision to leave the green and clean, the Oregon green, the soggy Northwest for sunny SoCal, that put my life on a plane of being that never would have happened had I not climbed in my little white 75 Dodge Colt and drove 865 miles, 865 south to the OC, the Orange County, where I knew not one person. But that in-the-moment simple decision to go south, it led me through a series of contingencies to meet the beautiful soul who would become my wife. So big decisions are important, yeah, but probably more influential, dozens and hundreds and thousands of little decisions. What do I mean? Oh, the decision when I was 14 that I didn't like feeling beguiled, or maybe at the time I would have said gamed. Didn't like feeling exploited by salesman-y types. Didn't at all like feeling chiseled by evangelists who would roll into town for a week or 2 weeks. Mercy, mercy. Didn't. And I intentionally thought this through. I didn't like being told that if I just get whipped up into a frenzy for Jesus, that my life would be better. I hate feeling hornswoggled. I say, hornswoggled. No, me, I'm super leery of people who think that I'd be a better person, a better Christian, if I just buy into their simple 3-step plan for success, 3-step plan for spiritual growth. Their simple 3-step plan for evangelistic success. Me, I'm not a fan. By choice. Instead, I think life is about a whole bunch of little mundane decisions. Little decisions. Should I look at porn or not? Patterns that sculpt our souls, right? Little decisions. Should I slide a few bucks out of the cash register? Little decisions. Little decisions. Things that go on in our souls. The quiet conversations we have by ourselves, deep down in our own being. The choices we make when no one is looking. Because across our lives, we become alternate people owing to the choices we make. And again, I don't want to bludgeon you with this, but I do want to make it clear. We tend to reminisce about the crossroads decisions in life, and of course they do matter. But the truth is, across life, it's the little daily decisions that add up. The decisions to have this value, to embrace that lifestyle. My hunch is more people suffer more from decades worth of seemingly minuscule decisions than they do from I'm at the fork in the road kind of decisions. As I said last week, thinking with Fyodor Dostoevsky, time is always open. There are always other choices that could have been made. Let me be personal for a moment, my listener. Realizing all this, or realizing some of it, bits and pieces, at different times in my life, it's why I've prayed since, I was 17. Lord God, please direct my steps. Please open your path before me. Yes, truly give me wisdom, but please, Abba, be involved in my life so that my path aligns with your path. My purpose aligns with your purpose. My work accords with the work for you have for me to accomplish. Oh, Lord, I only have one life, and I want it to have mattered to you. Today, welcome to my 4th episode, The Crusades. Here's what I'm going to lay out for you. A, I'll expose yet another rhetorical meme angle about the medieval Catholic motivations of the Crusades. B, I'll talk about how the dominant view of religion today overpowers our views of Christian-Muslim medieval warfare, again, the Crusades. C, I'm going to talk about just what is the Muslim perspective on violence and warfare in the name of their God. And thanks again, Miles, for asking me to clarify to give an outline for the direction of my show. So first, the meme angle. So far, we've seen that the contemporary secular meme, Christians today are all guilty for the medieval crusades, and with it, all Christians are really just closet crusaders. Those are rhetorical clubs. They're used to gag mute Christians. And you guys, paralleling that meme is the contemporary one. American Christians are Christian nationalists. It's just another rhetorical device used to silence and closet Christians, so don't fall for it. Realize that those who spew things like that they really just loathe evangelicals. But I want you to know there's another angle to how the Crusades get spun. And honestly, when I read it, I felt naive. Another way that the history of the Crusades gets spun, Catholics are evil, more evil than any other kind of Christian. Yep. It's a venomous anti-Catholic rhetoric with regard to the Crusades, and it began early in the history of the rise of Protestantism. There is a steady dose of Protestant invective that shapes contemporary interpretations of the Crusaders and the Crusades. So we wonder, did Protestants truly like Islam more than did Catholics? No. Did Martin Luther worry about the spread of Islam into Europe? Yes. Did Protestants affirm Islamic theological tenets where Catholics didn't? No. Did Protestants have a natural affinity for Islam? No. Did Protestants purposefully begin evangelism into the 1040 window owing to their love and respect of Islam? No. But 16th century and following Protestants were indeed savvy enough to know that they could win over undecided audiences by portraying the Crusades as, quote, just one more obvious example of barbaric Catholic wickedness. Isn't that just wild? Like I said, I felt so naive when I read it. The meme that all crusades were unnecessary and evil stems in part from a Protestant-driven anti-Catholic sentiment. Even Martin Luther, who enjoyed using heated rhetoric, once said, "To fight against the Turks is to oppose the judgment of God visited upon Europe's iniquities through them." Close quote. Well, Luther held that sentiment until he realized the Turks were storming the gates of Vienna in 1529. That was so close to home in Germany. Like I say, me, the historian, I felt naive that I hadn't, on my own, considered that a viable explanation. Oh, dear Christian audience, there's so much self-loathing today. There's so much assumption of evil motives on the part of other Christ-confessing people. When I post things on X or when I run an ad on Facebook, I'm practically stabbed in the heart by the stupidest, nitpickiest, snarky, rude, embarrassing things that otherwise believing Christians, Reformed, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Evangelical, Arminian, Independent, the things that Christians are willing to post to one another. We should have one another's backs, not be eagerly looking for a way to screw the other. And to me, it's so dang sad. I've said it so many times before, but the Reformation happened 500 years ago, but the red-hot rhetoric still runs deep. Honestly, you guys, this is my position. Praise God that Catholics stood up, confronted, did battle with Muslims for 12 to 13 centuries on end. Had not Catholic forces defeated Muslim forces in key battles at the European boundaries, there's a good chance Europe today would be Muslim. And queso sagrado, they're on a meteoric path to that happening anyway. And if Europe had gone Muslim, there'd be no America. Wow. So there's the meme. There's a Protestant spin to understanding the Crusades that overrides the truth. Let's talk about today's dominant view of religion. Owing to the Enlightenment and modernism and the university system and secularism and now radical postmodernism, we all believe that religion is a private affair. We're taught and pretty much embrace religion is a matter for a person and her God. Religion is a matter of personal perspective. Religion is for how you do your spirituality. Out in public space, we all agree to live by common sense and or decency, but then in the privacy of our homes, we pay attention to religious matters. You believe in your invisible things, and I'll believe in my invisible things. That's the dominant early 21st century American Western view of religion, but it's off the mark. Way, erroneous, amiss, awry. Guys, no religion was ever practiced that way. It wasn't until after the Enlightenment, modernism, the tentacles of the university system, and secularism, radical postmodernism, that we began to look at that religion that way. No. The single way to understand the nations, man, a whole continent, the single way to understand a nation's culture and wiring was to study its religion. Religion was, and still is, the single greatest element of any nation, country, people group. And I won't go today into how even non-religions function as religions, how what the culture loves as its cult, right? Point of worship, cult, point of esteem, cult, element of highest value, is in fact the reigning religion. No, the truth is, as author Glenn Elmers put it, listen to this, quote, "In the ancient world, all tribes or nations considered themselves chosen and protected by their gods. All ancient nations were closed societies in which civil and religious obedience were identical. All law was divine law. Priests were public officials, and there was no distinction between church and state. To defeat another nation in war meant defeating its gods. Every ancient city understood itself to be a holy city." Close quote. That's Glenn Elmers from Religious Liberty and the Genius of the American Founding in Imprimis from December. No, across human history, religion was always public. Religion was always totalizing, which means religion was about everything in life. The way we do it today is the aberration. That we think religion is a private, personal thing to be kept in the privacy of our homes is a very recent postmodern thing. We've de-religioned ourselves, and I'm not convinced it's for the good. The truth is, across human history, all religions are public. People are religious, and all religions go public.
Thank you for that. Can I go ahead and firebomb your Tesla dealership now?
Yeah, exactly. Even non-religious things become religions. But across the last 4,000 years, all religions have been public expressions because mankind is in our DNA religious. But what does this have to do with understanding the Crusades? Christianity in the West, Islam in the Middle East were not privately held ways of life. They both were publicly embraced, publicly practiced. And so it follows they both shaped public space, shaped their respective collective consciousnesses. They both shaped human reality, daily reality in their respective locales. Both religions shaped economic life. Both shaped agrarian life, shaped creation care, or not, industry. Shaped how men and women interact with one another. Back in the 11th century, or sheesh, in the 6th century when Islam arose, both religions, Christianity and Islam, profoundly shaped every element of life. So what? So what? Well, if we today superimpose the now dominant view of religion, last week I called it chronological snobbery, if we superimpose that onto medieval Catholicism or medieval Islam, we will fail to understand both what motivated individual soldiers, warriors, knights, caliphs, jihadis. We'll fail to understand what motivated those soldiers and what was motivating entire cultures on either side of the conflict, and why they fought for many centuries on end. Religion wasn't a private thing for them. The religious values, practices, traditions, the way that their respective religions ordered their everyday lives was all at stake. It was truly a clash of civilizations. And sorry, I'm going to say it again. If we superimpose our dominant, post-modern, packaged view of religion back onto the medieval era or any other, we will fail to understand what the principal actors, the folks involved in battle preparations, strategies, defense mechanisms, supply lines, financial investment and sacrifice, the sermons that went on then, justifications of torture and rape and slavery, the dealing with dead bodies, struggling with the horrors of warfare, will fail to understand what the really happened and why. So, today, the Crusades are snobbishly looked down upon because the now dominant view of religion is superimposed back on people who did not at all share our religion is a private matter kind of worldview. And that causes us to fail to realize what was at stake. And again, just what was at stake for Holy Roman Empire Catholics? Christian civilization itself. Why? Why was it all so dire? Well, that takes me to our special focus today. Let's turn to the volcanic explosive element of today's show, the part of the show that was waking me up the other night. Just what's the Muslim perspective on violence and warfare in the name of their God? Guys, I've said it in previous shows. I've studied Muslim versus Christian warfare, the struggle for dominance with regard to Byzantine Christianity. I taught a regular class on Byzantine church history. But I don't know. Is it because I haven't taught that class for 8 years? Is it because the Western world still refuses to take an honest look at Islam? I don't know, but it troubles my soul. When 9/11 happened back in 2001, I said to my college classes, when will the West begin to study Islam for what Muslims say about it? When will we take seriously what Islam says about what it wants, about what it shows what it wants? because we seem to struggle with a kind of historical amnesia. And I do think that that's what it is, historical amnesia. Amnesia about what Islam emphasizes since Muhammad founded it in 613. And me, gulp, knowing all that, me, gulp, knowing that Americans, Westerners, practice a willing ignorance about Islam. Well, like I say, it woke me up. The stress of that woke me up the other night, just thinking about what will happen to my audience. What'll happen to my download numbers if I tell the truth? But among OSA things, if we aren't honest, aren't historically accurate about what Muslims said about their own religion, there's just no way to accurately understand the Crusades. Now, full disclosure, for the nerdy nerds out there, you geeky geeks, the two most formative sources I've used to share with you what I will today and in later episodes are as follows. A book called The Decline of Christianity Under Islam, From Jihad to Dimitude by Bat Yor, Baatye', Bat Yor. That's translated from French into English, published by Fairleigh Dickinson University, 1996. Drawn principally from ancient primary sources, that is, mostly sources by Muslims, but also by Jews and Christians, the author, Ba'at Yor, which is a pseudonym, she uses a pseudonym, it's Hebrew for beautiful daughter. She uses that pseudonym because she fears for her life for having translated primary Arabic sources into French, for having actually translated Muslim sources, primary Muslim sources, and telling us what they wrote. She worked through those sources. Oh, what's a primary source? Yeah, what the original author, participants, journalists wrote. What's a secondary source? Studies of the primary sources. So I'm using a book by Bat Yor and a newer one by Raymond Ibrahim. It's called Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam and the West. Hatchet Books, 2018. And it's profoundly important because, like Yor, Ibrahim translates the original Arabic and Greek documents into English. And for me, you guys, both books, because they draw on primary sources in the original languages, are particularly significant. I'm using scholars who can read Arabic, scholars fluent in Arabic, and even more full disclosure, Raymond Ibrahim is both a fellow at several think tanks owing to Islam, and he's a Coptic Egyptian Christian. Thank you, Josh E., for that bibliographic lead. Okay, enough nerdy biblio-revelations. What motivated Muslims to invade Christianized lands? The teachings, the answer is the teachings, or better, the wiring, of Mohammed. Mohammed lived from AD 570 to 632. He started out as a kind of renegade. Put away and mostly ignored by the ruler of the big city Mecca, Muhammad had a hard time building followers for his religion. He irritated the people of Mecca with his new revelations from the angel Gabriel, revelations and teachings that were contradictory to the gods of Mecca. So the city's ruler, Abu Sufyan of the Quraysh tribe, Quraysh, the Quraysh tribe, drove Muhammad out of Mecca in 622. This was just 10 years before Muhammad died, so Muhammad only had huge success over the last 10 years or so of his life. Out in the desert, Muhammad and his crew began conducting raids on little villages and nomadic peoples. And Muhammad offered only one way for those he attacked to escape his scimitar. A scimitar is a curved sword. And that way was submit. If those whom Muhammad's troops attacked did not submit, they were to be looted and even massacred. But if they did submit, then they were to be deemed Muslims. So, of course, we got to ask, what was a Muslim? And the answer is, someone who submitted. Submitted to what? Well, actually, you'll be surprised because there's no great doctrinal creed, no great body of literature to study per se. No, what Muhammad wanted submission unto was this phrase, and it's called the Shahada. The Shahada, it's the oath or the creed, which goes like this. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Class, will you please say Shahada? Shahada, teacher. Yeah, that's really it. And to my own unsurprise, Muhammad didn't even press his enemies to sincerely mean that oath when they said it. They just had to say it, just had to say, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Saying the Shahada, saying the words themselves, was the submission. And get this. Ibrahim explains that, quote, Muhammad had only won over some 100 followers after a decade of peaceful preaching in Mecca. But he won over nearly the whole of Arabia after a decade of successful raiding, end quote. And during those 10 years of raiding, he conducted an average of 9 raids per year. So let's be clear. Muhammad conquered the whole Arabian Peninsula in 10 years? Yes, by violence, enforcing submission, using fraud and cruelty and injustice. And again, it was not Muhammad's preaching that led to conquest or his arguments or the beauty of his lifestyle. It was his violence. Submit or be raided. Submit or be raped. Submit or be murdered and massacred. And this strategy, this method, it proved quite successful. In the year 630, 2 years before he died, Muhammad went back to Mecca and conquered it. He even forced the leader there, Abu Sufyan, to say the Shahada. And when Abu did so, Muhammad's troops shouted, Allahu Akbar! Allah is the greatest. In Arabic, it's a comparative. Allah is greater than. So, how should we understand what happened? Raymond Ibrahim, again his family from Egypt, puts it like this. Islam is tribalism deified. Ibrahim says the appeal of Muhammad's message lay in its compatibility with the tribal mores of his society. 3 mores in particular: loyalty to one's tribe, enmity for other tribes, and raids on the other tribes to enrich and empower one's own tribe, end quote. Raymond Ibrahim helps us think this through. For we 21st century contemporaries, it's just common decency to treat all human beings as humanity, so they should be treated humanely. But for Muhammad and Islam, it is the tribe that is humanity. The tribe deserves to be treated humanely. Those outside the tribe, they're not fully human, so they do not deserve humane treatment. And I gotta pause right there. Just my rehearsing that little bit of Muslim ideology is a heart stopper, right? I mean, who talks that way? Who teaches that way? Muhammad. But scholar Raymond Ibrahim clarifies for us, quote, this is no exaggeration. Muslim philosopher Ibn Khaldun, who died in 1406, he described the Arabs of his time, let alone those from Muhammad's more primitive era 8 centuries earlier. He described the Arabs of his time as the most savage human beings that exist. Ibrahim went on, quote, Muhammad upheld the dichotomy of tribalism, but inverted that by prioritizing fellow Muslims over blood relatives. And thus, the Ummah, the Islamic super tribe that transcends racial, national, and linguistic barriers, the Ummah was born, and its natural enemy remained everyone outside it, end quote. Ibrahim pauses to note that the Ummah is often translated into English as nation, but because etymologically it's related to mother, U-M-M, it's better translated, Ummah is better translated as super tribe. Islam pits Muslims against all other tribes, all other peoples. Well, there's some history for you, but what does the Koran teach? Does the Koran teach a kind of super tribe? And the answer is yes. The Koran instructs Muslims to renounce and disown their non-Muslim relatives. Quran 58:22 reads, even if they be their fathers, sons, brothers, or their nearest kindred. Quran 6:40 reads that Muslims should feel only enmity and hate for non-Muslims until those non-Muslims believe in Allah alone, end quote. The Quran even describes non-Muslims as vile animals and beasts, the worst of creatures and demons, perverted transgressors and partners of Satan, to be fought until religion is Allah's alone. So they are to be beheaded, terrorized, annihilated, crucified, punished and expelled, and plotted against by deceit, end quote. So, knowing that's all in the origins, the point of origins, we can recognize easily that it was Muhammad's own conquest wherein jihad was born. The religion of Muhammad is preserved in the Koran. The Koran, and I'm going to say it softly, the Koran encourages jihad. The Koran teaches Muslims to, quote, attack and subjugate all the infidels in order to make the Muslim super tribe Ummah supreme. Attack and subjugate all the infidels. So yeah, even in the Quran, jihad, holy war, is esteemed. Muhammad himself said, quote, lining up for battle in the path of Allah is worthier than 60 years of worship. He also said, I cannot find anything as meritorious as jihad. Jihad can be likened to praying ceaselessly and fasting continuously. Close quote. So those who go into jihad for Allah are guaranteed the carnal spoils of war, plunder, slaves, concubines, money, if they're victorious. Because as it turns out in Islam, war is piety, and that's straight from Mohammed. Here's Islam's founder again, quote, every community has its monasticism, and the monasticism of my community is jihad in the path of Allah, close quote. If this is shocking you guys, it's because the West has a kind of historic amnesia about what's going on inside of Islam. Warfare as a standard means of piety? Even more, those who die for Allah in jihad are guaranteed blessings, including big-eyed concubines in the afterlife. Death in jihad is a guaranteed ticket into paradise. And on this point, dying for Allah in jihad, Muhammad said about Muslim martyrs, quote, he is forgiven from the first drop of blood he sheds. He will be given a ruby that is greater than the world and all it contains, and he will copulate with 72 huris. The huris are supernatural, 33-year-old, that's the end of the quote. This is Ibrahim going on. The huris are supernatural, 33-year-old celestial women, wide-eyed and big-bosomed, says the Quran. So huris were maiden women or virgins with black eyes, and they were created by Allah for the express purpose of gratifying Allah's favorites in perpetuity in the afterlife, end quote. Still more, Muslim martyrs can be sure that in paradise they will enjoy food, drink, gold, and eternally young boys. Close quote. You can imagine what that means. You guys, this is Muslim theology. Christianity has the cross to deal with human sins. Muhammad taught, conversely, that Islam has the sword. Raymond Ibrahim quoted Muhammad, quote, "The sword wipes away all sins," and then quotes him again, "Being killed in the path of Allah washes away impurity." Turns out, Muhammad hated the cross. Muhammad enjoyed smashing crosses when he would encounter them in homes and churches. He enjoyed smashing them to bits, and he hated the notion of Jesus dying on the cross. I'll come back to Muhammad's perspective on Jesus later, but he hated the notion of Jesus dying on the cross. Again, summarizing all this, Dr. Ibrahim wrote, quote, "Muhammad's most endearing contribution to world history is that in repackaging the tribal mores of the 7th century Arabia through a theological paradigm, Muhammad also deified tribalism, causing it to outlive its setting and spill into the modern era. Whereas most world civilizations have been able to slough off their historic tribalism and enter into modernity, to break with tribalism for Muslims is to break with Muhammad and his laws. So to break with cardinal Islamic teachings," end quote. You guys, in short, we learn that Muhammad and the Koran and established Muslim tradition, that all holds both jihad and dying in jihad in high esteem. Those who jihad for Allah are granted instant forgiveness of sins. So we don't have to think long or hard to realize that this notion, jihad equals forgiveness of sins, turned into a license for sinning. Violence was not only justified, but in this way glorified and encouraged. It's weird to say it because no one says it, but the record shows that jihad is itself Muslim piety. And building on this same notion, just because a Muslim soldier didn't pray or give alms to the poor didn't mean he was a bad Muslim. Because if he was a jihadi, he was a good Muslim. The emphasis is on jihad to honor and glorify Allah. So frankly, if Muhammad deified tribalism, as scholar Ibrahim says, so also did Muhammad deify warfare, because he taught it was glorious to fight for Allah, glorious to die for Allah. So warfare is equated to a kind of monastic piety. And I say that's strong stuff. It's the kind of stuff about which the West practices a willing ignorance, or as I said, a kind of historical amnesia. Are we afraid to talk that way? One Bat Yor says we won't talk that way because of our need for oil. I don't know, but I do not hear this discussed in public talks about Islam or in university lectures on Islam. Now, last week we saw that in 1095, Pope Urban II was offering an indulgence, and he based that in church authority, a guarantee of forgiveness and eternal life, right? He did that for those Catholics who went on a crusade to the Middle East. Pope Urban, why did he do it? What? To rally Catholics to defend European civilization? Was he trying to light a fire under them? I don't know. But he issued an indulgence of eternal forgiveness in the 11th century. A full 1,000 years after Jesus was resurrected, he did that. So we have a kind of theologized warfare that was formed 1,000 years after Jesus. With Muhammad, warfare equals piety from the start. And I believe it not only shows us a contrast between the two religions and how different they are, it also shows us that the notion of a crusade, conducting warfare to the glory of Christ for religious purposes, was a late development. Again, that over against jihad, warfare to the glory of Allah, which was built into Islam from the start, and somehow woven down into the fabric of the religion itself. And I say Those are massive contrasts. You guys, I'm honored that you would think with me. We're going to keep peeling the layers of this onion called the Crusades. Like I say, I'm honored that you would pause to think with me. God bless you and keep you, and please go and turn on those beautiful brains, and I'll see you next week.